What's up, guys? Chris Brown here again, No Nonsense Know-How. And today is going to be part one to kind of a two-part video. This one's going to be solely how to use the 3-point hitch, show you all the components on it, go over the basics, and show you the few implements that I have. And then the second part is going to be how to switch implements over, which I'll plug a link to that video up there. So if you only need that, then definitely check that out. Keep in mind, all this information is going to be on my Kubota B7500. So if you have a different machine, it might be slightly different. And all of this is from my personal experience. Might miss a thing or two, so make sure to drop a comment down below if you think I said something that was incorrect, and always check the description for any additions that I might add or things I forgot to mention. Here we go. Let's start by going over all the basic components on it. Obviously, it's called a 3-point hitch because you have 3 points of contact, 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top. This is called your top link, and this is adjustable. You would loosen this jam nut, and then this spins out and you can tilt the whole implement back. So you got that adjustment and a grease circle on there, which should be hit every once in a while to keep those threads from getting jammed up. And then you got your 2 lower links, I'll call them. Obviously everything on this system is on balls. So these should be greased every once in a while, and you have to make sure that they don't ever get seized up. Like I once saw a tractor where the top ones were seized up, and then the guy tried to force them over, and you could break or bend that rod up there. Same on the top link. You grease these up every once in a while, and they'll last a long time, but they do over time get loosey-goosey up in there, and you will eventually have to cut these and weld new ones on there if you have a 3-point hitch. You can see mine are getting pretty sloppy. Now, one side or the other on a Kubota, the right side is always going to be adjustable. So you can see, same thing, loosen that jam nut, and then you have threaded adjustment there. Yeah, I've had to make a repair to this at one point because that got a little mangled up. And if you haven't guessed it already, this link is to level your implement. Then down below, you have stabilizer links on each side. And these adjust the implement side to side, but you have to make sure, like say you wanted to have the tiller off to the right side, you got to make sure that these are tight and snug, and you shouldn't be able to rock your tiller back and forth. It should be locked tight to the tractor, because if you left them loose, you would potentially cause damage to these and bend them, and I've actually had that happen before. You can see they also take cotter pins that lock them out and keep them from working loose over time. So you got to make sure that's in position. And of course, any mechanically driven implement is going to have a PTO shaft connected to the tractor. They should always have a plastic shield on them, so that way if you were to have your clothes get stuck and fall down here when it's running, it's not going to get sucked into the shaft, or at least less likely to. 3-point hitches were invented in, I believe, the 1920s, and before that everything would be ran off a drawbar like this here, and that slides into the back. It's important to note that you do want to remove this anytime you have a tiller or anything on there, because the drive shaft could actually come in contact, which is what happened right here. You see that shiny metal? Forgot to take it out once and the drive shaft hit it, so don't do that. The lifting action on a 3-point hitch come from these 2 top links that are connected to the tractor hydraulics. A lot of people think a 3-point hitch can actually push down too, and that's just not the case. It can lift. This lifts, I think, around 900 or 1,000 pounds, but it cannot push. It will only drop down the implement on whatever the implement's weight is. So if you're using this box blade, that digs in pretty good, but if you have to make it dig in more, you'd have to put weights on top of it. Reason they don't have them push down is because theoretically that could take traction off the rear wheels, cause them to lift up, and then that'd be an unsafe condition. So let's operate this thing now. Fuel shut off in, clutch in, preheat, and fire her up. It's always recommended to let the engine get up to operating temperature, let the fluid warm up before operating this. But once it is, to raise your 3-point hitch, you would push this back. You can see it's already raised though. To lower it, you'd push here. Well, heck, it's still not moving. And that's because you have a flow control valve right here. When it's turned all the way to the right clockwise, it's locked out and will keep the 3-point from settling down. And as you turn this, you usually crack it about 1/8, maybe 1/4 turn to the left, and you can see now that will go down. And so this adjusts the speed. If you want it to go down slowly, you would just go a crack open. This tractor only has 2 positions, down and up. Some tractors will have a float position too, but this doesn't have that. So to go up, you just simply throw that back and it should shut off on its own when it gets to the top, if it's adjusted properly, which there you go. Not going into detail on this, but you actually can adjust down here on this lever how low you want the implement to drop down. It's for a separate video though. Now, to turn your implement on, you always want to make sure that it's raised up off the ground, and you don't want to leave the tiller down in the ground when you turn it on. However, not so high that your drive shaft is on a really steep angle like that. So I'll lower this down just a little bit to where we're still elevated from the ground, but the drive shaft's not on such an aggressive angle. To run the tiller, you're going to push the clutch in, put this into the low range. You never want to operate it in the high range. That could wear out the hydrostatic transmission. And then go ahead and set your RPM up to the 540 PTO speed, or you can go a touch less if you want. Now clutch in, put it back to the 540 RPM and clutch out, and we are tilling. You can now lower your implement down into the soil, but I always recommend keeping your left foot on here, or be ready to raise it up in case you hit a brick or something like that, because you could cause damage, or it could actually hurt you and throw you off the tractor too. To turn the tiller off, clutch in again and shift that to neutral. And then when you're done with the tiller, make sure to raise her back up and lock out the control valve. This tiller is rated for 540 RPM, along with every other one I've ever seen. And most tractors will have a lockout plate here like that, but I also added a wire to prevent you from shifting to the 960 RPM up here. Couple other things I should mention. Never get off the tractor with the PTO shaft still engaged. Always clutch in and go to neutral before getting off. And never shut the tractor off while it's still engaged either. It actually does have to be in the neutral position, otherwise there's a safety interlock. You cannot start this tractor when the shaft is engaged, but always neutral it out before you shut her down. Another piece I'll make brief mention of is the slip clutch drive shaft on here. If you look inside of here, there's a series of springs, and there's actually a clutch plate in between there. The purpose of this is for if the tiller hits a large rock or something that would stop the tines right away, then this would potentially slip and prevent damage to the transmission of the tiller or tractor. So if you ever engage the tiller and the tines aren't spinning, make sure to check the adjustment on your slip clutch. You might have to crank those down a little bit over time, as that plate may wear out. Even though I said never leave the tractor with the PTO running, here's just a good example of how important these plastic covers are. Obviously never reach in here when it's spinning, but if you did and you grabbed that, it would stop and it wouldn't hurt you. Same thing on this spinning shaft. It has a plastic sleeve over top of it. So those are very important to have in position. When it comes to the adjustment on all of these links, I'd say the most crucial one is going to be the top link, and especially when you're working with the box blade, because that's going to make the difference of if the box blade's digging in a bunch or actually floating and leveling. Not really going into that detail on this video. I think that's a separate one, but really it's just practice makes perfect. And if you find you're not happy with the performance, definitely go back and check your adjustment, because you might have the tiller on there crooked, and that's going to obviously give you some difficulty. As far as other attachments I have, you got the front loader, which is 48 inches wide, roughly. A 5-foot box blade, which does have grading blades on the inner side and back, so you can reverse this as well. If that's not digging in enough, you can take these teeth, you just pop this pin out right here, pull it up, and then you can flip all 5 of those upside down and set them at the depth that you want for ripping. This works excellent for grading, much easier than trying to grade with the bucket. Then I've got a 5-foot York rake, which works excellent for grading out topsoil or cleaning an area up. It is missing one tine on each end, so I guess it's a touch under 5 feet. Gotta replace those. I do have wheels for it too. And quick note here, never ever reverse when you have the York rake on or the tiller on and you're using them. You can reverse with the box blade, of course, because it has the blade there, but don't reverse with either of these two because you'll cause damage. And this is adjustable. You pull this pin here and you can pivot this basically about 360 if you'd like. And the only other thing I have is my trailer mover, so if you need that, let me know and I'll toss that in if you think you got to move some trailers around. I think that pretty much covers everything on my setup here. I always leave this tiller on because it acts as an excellent counterweight on the back when you're doing front loader work. Very heavy. I tried to keep this pretty elementary because I don't want to give you information that you don't necessarily need. But let's just recap. Make sure to always clutch in before you shift ranges. Do not use the tiller when you're in the high range. And of course, clutch in before you shift the PTO on, which is called the power takeoff shaft. Make sure before you turn the shaft on, the implement's not down in the muck and dirt, and that your drive shaft's not on a steep angle like that, that it's fully up. Great idea to keep your foot on that clutch when you're tilling, so that way if you hit a big boulder or a tree root, you can snap the clutch in real quick and address the situation. And don't forget to lock it out when you're done, so that way it won't settle down on you, won't go down at all. Otherwise it's going to start dragging on the ground and you might not notice it right away. Always make sure to recheck your adjustment and that the tiller hasn't loosened up. And of course, if you're swinging it to one side or another, make sure that it's not digging into the tire. Hopefully this didn't run on too long and that I more than got the point across. Make sure to drop this video a thumbs up if it helped you out, or consider leaving me a comment. If there's anything I forgot to mention, definitely feel free to leave that down below, because I appreciate that kind of thing. Consider checking out the channel. And until next time, Chris Brown here, No Nonsense Know How. See you in the next one.